Hey everybody, welcome back to Video So here we're doing a series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and of course it's been a few days since we talked about the work in progress Sega Saturn Core, and that means there's been some big improvements to the core. SRG320 updated it over the weekend, bringing a bunch of bug fixes to games we've talked about recently, as well as a rewrite of the RAM controller for efficiency, which has improved the core all around, especially for people that seem to have the 2.5 VRAM module. I'm sure a lot of you are going to be happy to hear that. Before we get far involved, it'd be a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But one of the games since the last time we tested it that I saw improvements on was Power Slave or Exhumed. There's still a few graphical glitches here and there, but it is running much smoother, and it now has, at least on my setup, perfect audio. I will let you know when I'm testing a 2.5 RAM module in the video and when I'm on a 2.9 or 3.0. In this instance, this is a dual RAM 3.0, but I am only testing the single RAM core. All of my Saturn testing videos are on single RAM because I know it's what most of you use. But honestly, the improvements in Power Slave are night and day different from the last time we covered this game, and a lot of you asked to see retests. It's running faster, the graphics are better, the sound is pristine, everything about this just feels like real Sega Saturn hardware, outside of a few texture glitches at the corners of the screen that you would absolutely have to pause the video and look for. If I didn't tell you they were there, you might not ever notice them, and this is just absolutely an amazing experience to have on the current Sega Saturn Core. Not only is Power Slave one of the best first-person shooters of its era in my opinion, but now on the current core it feels so close to real Sega Saturn hardware. If it wasn't for that one graphical glitch that I saw earlier in the capture, I would think this would be one-to-one perfect with real hardware. And if for any reason you've never played Power Slave or Exhumed before, it has a different title depending on the region, I can't recommend this game enough. This is one of the top 10 Sega Saturn games in my opinion, and I do think this is the best first-person shooter on the platform because Lobotomy Software were absolute wizards when it came to Sega Saturn programming. Their games on this hardware make the Sega Saturn sing in ways that no other developer, including Sega, ever seemed to manage. And Power Slave is 100% keeping up with the core today. Now I am on newer RAM, but I've checked with some people that have the 2.5V modules, and they are getting the same results. Now do be aware, it's not just down to what module you have, it's also the speed at which it runs, but for the most part, this update, as far as the core is concerned, seems to bring better results if you have that 2.5 VRAM module. Be aware, I'm talking about the 2-chip one, not the 4-chip one. That really doesn't seem to be supported by the core whatsoever from what SRG320 has said. Now I am moving over to a 2.5V module capture. This is from Octane. He's had issues in the past getting certain games to run, and he's told me about them in the background. He tested Mega Man 8 today, and he got a perfectly fluid FMV, which is very hard to get on any RAM variant, and he also was able to play the game when it used to freeze on him in the menu. So this is another vast improvement on certain MiSTer hardware today. And that's the thing about the RAM controller rewrite for efficiencies. It has improved things, and that's going to improve your experience with older RAM modules. Now I can't say that you're not still going to want to upgrade to something newer than a 2.5V, and I'll leave a link to the description below, at least in the US, where I get my RAM from MiSTer add-ons. But honestly, this is a better time, and as far as the gameplay is concerned, as far as the graphics, the audio are concerned, Mega Man 8 is one-to-one with real hardware. I checked this in the background before I used Octane's footage, just so I knew I was getting an exact same experience so I could speak more intelligently to it, and I could not tell a single bit of difference between real hardware and Mega Man 8 when it came to MiSTer FPGA. If you see anything in this capture you don't think is correct, leave me a comment down below, but I honestly think everyone's going to see the exact same thing, which is just this game running exactly as you would expect, and I absolutely love Mega Man 8. It's fun, it's challenging, and the colors and the 2D artwork just look spectacular on Sega Saturn. Saturn had such great 2D hardware, and Mega Man 8 on Saturn is utilizing all of that power to create such an amazing image, and the sound compared to last time we let you play this game is so much better. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, and I'll be right back. Sounds exactly like it should, and again, this is something that a lot of people on older RAM modules are having trouble experiencing. Now, I do have a 2.5V RAM build that I do keep around when I want to test something like Sega Saturn on an older module, and honestly, outside of Sega Saturn, it's perfectly fine for pretty much every other core, so it's the one I keep hooked up to my analog PVM just when I want to play MiSTer, but less so for actually doing this video work, and I've always been able to play this one, so maybe you have too, but that's still the interesting thing about the Saturn core. The memory timings, the module you have may affect things. Let's move over to Teradiver. This is another one sent in by Octane. I don't care what people say about him, I think he's alright. And it's another game that's running so much better now that this new core is out. And the new core is basically a combination of that RAM controller rewrite as well as bug fixing. We're going to get into some of the new games that work and some of the bug fixes in just a moment. But again, this was one for a lot of people that they could barely even get it to boot. And if they could, it would have massive issues. Now, as far as the visuals are concerned and the gameplay is concerned, it looks really good. Now, this is one of those games that still seems to have audio issues where you're not going to get the soundtrack to play sometimes. I tested this on my 2.9V module of MiSTer as well as my newer MiSTer with dual RAM, and I had audio issues as well. I could get the audio to play, but it would start to drop out every once in a while, which still seems to be a slight problem with the core. It seems like a lot of the work going into this, outside of graphical bug fixes, are trying to get the memory timings and everything tightened up and a little bit more stable so that people get the exact same result. This isn't like it was back in summer of last year where you'd have two people with the exact same hardware getting two different results, but there are still a little bit of a struggle on the memory timings, it seems. But everything is getting better. I'm sure as SRG320 continues to work on this, we're going to get to a situation in which, as long as you have the 2-chip memory module, you should have a good experience with Saturn. Of course, I am presuming that. You can't quote me on it. I'm just doing this based upon my experience reviewing all of these cores and kind of going through all the GitHub notes and changes. But as we pivot from the MiSTer FPGA to just talk about Teradiver, if you've never played this game before, I would consider this probably Rising's best shmup, but tell me down below which Rising game is your favorite. It is not an easy one whatsoever, but on Sega Saturn, it's an absolute 10 out of 10 Hall of Fame first ballot level shmup. If you're even remotely into the genre, definitely play this if you haven't, and if you're not into the genre whatsoever, play it anyway. I think you're going to love it. Now, Time Gal was a game that did not work for anybody up until this core. You could sometimes get in, and sometimes you'd get the heads-up display with the player 1 and score, but you wouldn't have the FMV underneath it. You might have some audio, but you had no video. And if you're not familiar with Time Gal, it's basically just Dragon's Lair in a different genre as far as the thematic content is concerned. And if you can't watch the FMV video, you really can't play Time Gal. Now, today when I tested this, it worked 100% of the time, every single time. This is an either you love it or hate it genre. I actually really like these games. That's because growing up, we had a Dragon's Lair cabinet in our local arcade, and my dad had the entire thing memorized and could beat it on 1 credit. The first 1cc I ever saw in my life was my father, and that's a really fun story because he just memorized it. And the soundtrack's amazing too, so go ahead and listen. Absolutely ridiculous audio as far as the dialogue is concerned, and I love when Time Gal actually dies in-game. She completely changes her face into an anime character, not like the one you're looking at on screen, but way more of that super deformed look. But again, I know this is a genre people either absolutely love it or don't go anywhere near it. But as far as games that didn't used to work on the Sega Saturn Work in Progress core versus games that now do, this one has been added to the list, and it's got a great sense of humor as well. You get the Godzilla roar right here, and Godzilla himself, at least that's what I'm assuming because it is his roar, comes out of the water and you have to have a running battle against him. Probably isn't Godzilla, but it's the same sound effect, and honestly that's good enough for me because I'm a huge Godzilla fan. So Time Gal as well as Ninja Hagane, the other game on this 2-disc set, now work on MiSTer FPGA, and I'll show you the other game the next time we do a Saturn testing video. Now moving back over to Asuka 120, you saw this in the previous capture, and this had graphical glitches. Watch the sprites, you're going to see those lines go through them right now. There was some sort of issue, probably in the scaling code, where the sprites would have corruption. Now as we move over to today's core, or actually 2 days ago's core, you will see that all of that sprite corruption is 100% fixed. This is absolutely impressive because it is a thing. I showed it to you last video, and by the next video SRG320 has patched it up. So there was some sort of bug in these sprites, probably due to scaling would be my guess, where you would get the sprites breaking apart and you would see the strips as to how they were made up in engine and on VDP1 and VDP2. So it's always fun to be able to show you back to back how a glitch got fixed. So if you want to play a Suka 120 today, you're going to get the exact same experience as the last video, except now you're not going to have any graphical glitches. So again, this is one of those things. Last time it was 100% playable, you could have a great time, you just might get a visual glitch here and there. Today, if you play the same game, you're going to have the same great time, have the same great graphics, gameplay, and control, and you're going to be missing that sprite glitch. So that is a fundamental improvement from one core to the next. And I know SRG320 is going through some of the GitHub tickets as far as issue reports are concerned and fixing the core from there. So if you do know of any other glitches that haven't been mentioned on Discord, or you don't know if they've been mentioned at all, go over to his GitHub and check the open tickets. If you don't see that glitch listed, definitely submit a ticket nicely. Now moving over to the last game in the capture, big thanks to Andy D for doing this one. This is Zoop. What is Zoop? I have no idea. I have never understood what this game is all about. It's obviously a puzzle game. It screams 90s. If you weren't alive in the 90s, this is basically what everything looked like. All jokes aside, this was the glitch last time. In the previous core, all of the graphics would be doubled up. That shadow and shading underneath all of the different shapes was not there. Now in the current core, you can see that they all have their drop shadow and they are not replicating themselves. So again, this must have just been a glitch in VDP1 or VDP2 on a certain graphical effect. And it's not like Zoop is the most exciting game to look at, but it is a really good visual example of what those sprites looked like when they were bugged. And if you do know this game, if you do remember it from back in the day, leave me a comment down below and tell me what it is that I'm missing. Because I've never understood Zoop in my life. I have no idea what it's trying to do, why it's trying to do it, or how you should be playing the game. It's just one of those things. I remember it from back in the 90s. I knew it existed, and I have not played it or looked at it since until it was a fixed bug on the MiSTer FPGA Sega Saturn core. So honestly, if I didn't have this core, I would probably forget Zoop existed. But if you want to play it in your favorite game, it works much better on the core now. And that's the current situation with the current Sega Saturn core. That RAM controller rewrite has definitely improved a lot of things, and some of the bug fixing have improved sprites in certain games and made other games playable. And that's always awesome. We got a big fix on the RAM, a lot of sprite issues fixed, and a couple new games playing on this core as well. But if you want me to retest something on this newest RAM rewrite core that I haven't shown you in a while, leave me a comment down below with the title, but short of that, go over to Discord, grab the core, and start playing. Bye-bye.